Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about how Frank Herbert perfectly predicted the shape of participant types in Dungeons and Dragons in Dune. So I'm of the belief that Frank Herbert knew that Dune would be the last relevant fiction novel, and that fiction novels would die with Dune, right? We certainly are getting some good novels even today. Why is that, right? If novels are dead, why are we still getting, I wouldn't say relevant novels. Why are we still getting good novels? Novels that people are paying attention to, right? Because how do you explain the Harry Potter ones? Well, it's a chicken with its head cut off. There's still motion. There's still activity. There's still blood in the body, right? But I do think fiction novels times is completely gone. It is a completely antiquated um, medium for narrative, right? And I think Herbert knew that basically Dune would be the last death spasms of the fiction novel, would be the last relevant fiction novel. And in that, he predicted what was coming next, right? So I've already explained how he analoged the dungeon master by with the Lisan al Gaib, the voice of the outer world. That's exactly what a dungeon master is. He's the voice. She is the voice from the outer world, right? Speaking in, defining everything that from speaking from outside of the world, right? And defining and constructing all of it with this outer voice, with this voice of authority, the voice that everyone listens to, leading the way, right? Deciding all of the rules for everyone, right? That's what the Lisan Gaib did. That's exactly what the Dungeon Master does. Now, does Frank Herbert analog the Dragon Master, the Dungeons and Dragons player? I don't use the term Dungeons and Dragons player anymore. I'm trying to abandon it. I don't think it fits what Dungeons and Dragons players do. It's too small. Like, it stretches at the seams. And I think Dragon Master is a better term. So when I say Dragon Master, I mean Dungeons and Dragons player. So does he analog the Dragon Masters? He analogs one type of Dragon Masters, but not all Dragon Masters. And how does he do that? He does it with Chani, right? So it's really fascinating. Chani, so there's this question throughout Dune of, is Paul a real Messiah for Dune, right? And Stilgar is a true believer, right? He believes in he very much believes in the in Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, right? And I mean, to the point of, literally, he says in the very beginning he's willing to stake his life for him, right? So he truly believes, right? But Chani never believes, and Chani never bows to Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. She never accepts him as a Messiah, right? And she remains unbowed. But does she fight him? Absolutely not. She literally, like, ties herself to him in every possible way, right? She supports him. She makes sure that he is able to advance every goal to position himself as the Lisan al Gaib, right? So how is Chani reflecting a player, a dragon master, right? One of the dragon masters who has a player character, signs the player character sheet, puts pen to paper, puts the name of the player character down, all of that, right? Well, Chani is the unbowed dragon master, the unbowed player, right? So what do I mean by this? Well, you've seen them. I've seen them, right? And so this is the player who comes in and this is the dragon master, the player who comes in and engages with your campaign, right? And honors you as the dungeon master during each session to a limited extent, right? but never bows and never fully accepts you as the dungeon master, because they're convinced they should be the dungeon master, or they will be the dungeon master, or that they can be the dungeon master. And so this is the player, right? This is the dragon master at the table who's like, oh my gosh, I see what this is, right? I see the story that's being crafted. I see the dungeon master leading the way, but wait a second, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like how this is unfolding. I can do this better. And from the first night is like, oh, I'm in the wrong chair. I should be dungeon master, right? And then becomes dungeon master. And I think that's Chani, right? And so Chani is the unbowed Fremen. She never bows. She never kneels, right? For Paul Atreides. And she is like, I see you trying to lead. I could lead better, right? I think that's what she's saying through the entirety of her relationship with Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. However, she crafts the narrative with him, right? All she had to do was not show up when Stilgar sends him into the desert, and Paul would have died that night. But instead, she shows him how to use wind traps, and she completely provisions him as the Lisan al-Gaib, but never gives up the idea that she should be the leader of the Fremen, right? And I think that, and this is, Chani is a perfect example of the player, the dragon master, who from the first moment they see the dungeon master do what they're doing, says, I should be the dungeon master. If not at this table, then I'll set up my own table. I'll take players from here, whatever it takes, right? I can be the dungeon master. I should be the dungeon master. This is the unbowed. Chani represents the unbowed dragon master, the unbowed player. Very, very interesting. I was so blown away with, everything that Frank Herbert was able to accomplish with Dune. And of course, Denis Villeneuve has completed presenting, Frank Herbert's work on the big screen, and I highly recommend you watch it. And the reality is, I'm positive now that Frank Herbert definitely knew that Dune would be the last relevant fiction novel, and that it would be the death of the American author, right, at the conceptual level. And I think he predicted and shaped. He showed exactly the shape of the new narrative form, the master form that would come out, which would be Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think he knew what it was going to be named. I definitely think he knew it was not going to be video games, but I think he knew there was a more powerful form of narrative coming, and I think he depicted it perfectly with what's in Dune. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your humble opinion. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.